Good afternoon and welcome to the April crop production and WASDE briefings. My name is Lance Honig and I serve as chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board at NASS. This briefing is for the Secretary of Agriculture and other policymakers at USDA to better understand the content and context of today's reports. We're very pleased to have Dr. Seth Meyer, USDA's chief economist, join us as Secretary Designate today. Dr. Meyer, I'd like to point out that we do have some visitors with us today from both the American Farm Bureau Federation and some USDA staff. So welcome to all right here on the front row for us. Before I turn things over to our presenters, I do have a few notes for our live streaming audience. The WASDE and crop production reports are considered principal federal economic indicator reports. The Office of Management and Budget provides specific guidance on how these important reports are to be released. OMB statistical policy instructs policymaking officials to refrain from making public comment regarding the content of these reports within 30 minutes of their release. Therefore, we will not be taking questions from the public during this briefing. Both NASS and World Board staff are available for phone and email questions, and NASS will host a social media event at 1 o'clock Eastern Time this afternoon. We strive to always have everything presented at this briefing match the official record. However, should there be any discrepancy, always refer to the official published estimates. With that, I'll turn things over to Patrick Boyle, Chief of the NASS Crops Branch. He will be immediately followed by Dr. Mark Jekanowski, Chair of the World Ag Outlook Board. Patrick?
Lance, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today and welcome to those who are joining us on the live stream as well. I've only got a few crop production updates for you today, just citrus crops. So my portion of today's briefing will move along rather quickly. Before we dig into those citrus numbers, as we normally do, I want to share some information on the data sources that we use to put together today's report. You can see in green, part of our objective measurement program, are trained enumerators took counts and measurements from 745 citrus groves in Florida in mid to late March. And we also looked at weekly utilization data from the Florida Citrus Administrative Committee, and that includes information on boxes packed or processed. Now on to the latest citrus production data. All orange production is forecast at 2.46 million tons. That's up 1.6% from last month, but down 8.2% compared to last season. Non-Valencia oranges are up 2.1% from last month, but down 1.9% from last season, while Valencia varieties are up slightly from March, but down more than 22% compared to last year. Grapefruit production is forecast at 319,000 tons. That's up 6.7% from the last forecast, but down 2.7% from last season. Lemon production is up 3.8% from last month's forecast and up 12.5% compared to last season. U.S. tangerine production at just over 1 million tons is up 4.1% from last month, but down 4.5% from last season. The forecast for Florida for tangerines is at 19,000 tons, would be the lowest tangerine production on record for Florida. So like I said, just a handful of commodities for you today, but before I wrap up, here's a look at a few of our upcoming reports. Coming up in the second half of April, we've got cattle on feed, hemp, and ag prices, as well as the 2022 census data for American Samoa and Guam. Looking ahead at May, we've got our care reports on the 1st, non-citrus fruit and nuts on the 2nd, and some 2024 row crop county estimates out on the 6th. And then we'll be right back here on the 12th of May for another crop production report, as well as cotton ginnings and 2024 cotton county estimates. Just want to put in a quick plug for our upcoming data users meeting. This is a great opportunity to hear from and ask questions of the many government agencies that produce and work with agricultural data. This spring's event will take place on April 29th and will be 100% virtual. It is free and open to the public. However, you do have to register to participate. So I'd encourage you to check out the NASS website for more information and to get registered. And as Lance mentioned a moment ago, coming up at 1 Eastern today, we'll be hosting a session of Stat Chat on X to take questions and share additional information on today's reports. And then finally, as always, the full reports are available on our website. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And that concludes my portion of today's briefing. I'll turn it over to Dr. Jekanowski for the full report.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm gonna walk you through the details of this month's WASDE report. Just starting out, obviously this month, our focus is still on the old crop. May is when we roll out new crop year, so that's something to look forward to. No new data from NASS this month, but we do have some important data, recently released data from NASS to incorporate, including the stocks reports and the quarterly hogs and pigs report. We're also going to talk a little bit about Argentina cotton production. And along the way, we'll talk a little bit about tariffs as well. Global wheat production changes this month, very minimal. Really primarily limited to a change in the European Union based on updated official data from the EU, but overall small changes in terms of the world wheat production outlook. Regarding the balance sheet, global wheat balance sheet, I'll walk you through this. Beginning stocks down a bit. That's mainly some adjustments to Uzbekistan and Israel on the back year. Other thing I would focus on here, total use down. That is mainly lower total use in India and China. And a little bit more about China. There's actually a lot going on with China that is worth discussing in this balance sheet as well. We reduced our China wheat imports this month by 3 million tons, now down to 3.5 million tons total imports by China. As you can see, pretty large year-over-year reduction in trade, in global wheat trade. 10 million of that is due to reduced imports by China. Then on the export side, regarding wheat trade, lower exports out of this month out of Russia, US, Australia, and the EU. US wheat balance sheet, trade data, kind of just updating things based on recent pace. Imports up, that's hard red spring and durum. A reminder that there are no tariffs on wheat from Canada covered under USMCA. Seed use down a bit, 2 million bushels this month. That's based on the prospective plantings report. It was just released March 31st. Exports also down this month, 15 million bushels. That's based on sales and shipments. That's primarily hard red spring and hard red winter, lower sales there. And given those changes in trade, we end up with a slightly higher ending stocks, up 27 million bushels this month. No change to the price at this point. Most of the crop has been marketed. We're up 90% or more marketed. Rice, global rice production, mainly a story about India this month. India accounts for as you can see there, the bulk of the increased production this month. This would be the 9th consecutive record crop by India. And interestingly, too, you can see that India now surpasses China as the largest largest rice producer in the world. And that increase this month, so 2 million ton increase is based on the second advanced estimate from India's government, largely based on area. The other changes this month, small Brazil, that's based on CONABI data. Indonesia has been having really favorable weather, so a little increase there as well. And change in Cambodia, that's based on post reporting. Global rice balance sheet, also mainly a India story. Production, as we just talked about, production increase this month dominated by an increase in India. Total use up, that is largely increases in use in sub-Saharan African countries, including Ivory Coast, Senegal, and many others. Trade up, exports that primarily driven by record trade, and increase this month is that's increased exports by India. Large crop, no export controls, so large exports there, and again, the increase in uses this month, increase in use this month is primarily in sub-Saharan African countries. Ending stocks up a bit, mainly reflecting higher stocks in Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. U.S. balance sheet, again, mainly focusing on U.S. rice trade, truing up to recent trade data. Imports reduced this month, 1 million hundredweight. That is all a reduction in medium short grain into Puerto Rico. And China is a large supplier of that, as you know. So reduced this month. Exports down 1.5 million hundredweight. Long grain exports were reduced 2 million. Western Hemisphere rough rice, slower sales there. Medium short exports were raised, offsetting, partially offsetting that lower long grain. Medium short grain were exports raised 500,000 hundredweight on relatively strong sales to Northeast Asia. And ending stocks tighten up a bit, given these changes in trade. Again, no changes in our season average market price for rice this month. Moving into corn, small changes in terms of the global corn production outlook. European Union up a bit, just based on government data. FSU production down a bit, again, just adjusting to recent government data. That is a reduction there in Moldova. Global corn balance sheet. Main thing I'd point out here, feed use up 1.8 million tons. That is mainly increased feed use in the EU, given larger crop, higher production there. Partially offset by lower feed use in the US and Moldova. Global corn exports up, dominated by increased exports by the US, which we'll talk about in a minute, partially offset by lower exports, lower corn exports from Pakistan, and ending stocks down. That is largely the US as well. Regarding US exports, as you know, competitive US prices are keeping the export base relatively strong. US corn balance sheet. Feed residual adjusted a little bit lower. That's based on the stocks report, of course. Exports, you can see there, large increase this month, 100 million bushels. As I noted, just competitive prices, keeping that export pace strong this month. And so when you add up the changes in feed residual and exports, we tighten up ending stocks by 75 million bushels. Didn't make any changes to our season average price. Global soybean production, put up the back year this month. We did make a change to Brazil, raised Brazil's production 1.5 million tons, just based on a review of disappearance data, trade crush stocks. Based on that disappearance, it seems fairly apparent that crop was bigger than we had expected, bigger than many people had expected. And then in terms of the new crop year, minimal changes there. A few countries that don't show up on the list. Reduction in Bolivia. Some torrential rainfall right before harvest there. Partially offset by increased production in the EU and South Africa. Global balance sheet. Beginning stocks up a bit this month. That's mainly reflecting that larger crop in Brazil, back year adjustment, along with some various other data updates and revisions on back year balance sheet variables. The other big story, crush, global crush raised 2 million tons this month. That's higher crush in Brazil, Argentina, US, and Ukraine. We've seen very strong soybean meal consumption given ample supplies and relatively low prices, especially and low prices and ample supplies and relatively tighter supplies of competing types of meal. Global soybean trade up. That's increases by higher exports by Canada and Nigeria, partially offset by lower exports out of Ukraine. U.S. balance sheet, I mentioned already, higher crush in the U.S. So you can see there, we increased our U.S. Crush forecast 10 million bushels. Imports increased as well, just based on recent pace. And again, strong domestic soy meal disappearance and strong soybean oil exports driving that stronger crush this month. And the ending stocks tighten up by 5 million bushels and no change to our season average market price. So let's talk a little bit now about soybean oil. I mentioned strong exports. You'll see here we raised our soybean oil export forecast by 500 million pounds. Reduced our, offsetting that 500 million pound increase for exports, we reduced biofuel, soybean use for biofuels by 2 million pounds. And couple things going on there. You still note a pretty strong year-over-year increase in soybean use for biofuel. Use is down for now based on the recent pace, but we expect demand to strengthen later in the year, in part given tighter supplies of competing feedstocks, including used cooking oil under the new tariff regime. So that should, so if not for that, biofuel use for soybean meal would likely be decreasing even further in this balance sheet. Total supply up, that's just based on the crush data I already showed you. Ending stocks for soybean oil tightening up just a bit there, 80 million pounds. Now moving into cotton. We'll talk a little bit about Argentina. We reduced our production forecast there by 200,000 bales. The other main story here in terms of global cotton production is China. And this is a story, it's been several months in a row now. We continue to increase that crop. This is reflecting Classings data. Just continues to show that that crop was bigger than we expected. And consistent with excellent weather that they had, particularly in the Xinjiang area, which accounts for the vast majority of cotton production in China. So let's talk just real briefly about Argentina cotton production, just a map here of where the main regions in Argentina where cotton is produced. Currently, we're in in the harvest phase for cotton. Essentially, so here's a rainfall trace. 2025 is in red. There we got rainfall year started out relatively favorable, and then dried out considerably. Couple periods of rain, especially late in March, but by March it was too late for the crop. Damage was already done. It was dry and it was also hot, and that reduced yield prospects, and that is driving our reduction this year. And it also shows up pretty clearly in consistently worse over time VHI indices for the main cotton production regions in Argentina. So the cotton balance sheet, let's talk about that for a minute. And here is, commodity where the tariffs, U.S. import tariffs, have a relatively large impact on the global balance sheet. Cotton consumption, we reduced by 500,000 bales this month. That is largely tariff driven for both the 10% tariffs on most of the world's countries, and then the higher tariffs on China as well, driving that. Trade reduced 400,000 bales this month, largely reflecting lower cotton exports by U.S., Brazil, and Australia, and lower imports by China, reflecting their larger crop as well. Just a little bit of an illustration here. I wanted to point out about the importance of the U.S. as a market for cotton apparel, and which explains why the tariffs in the U.S. have such a large impact on global consumption. So here's the blue line at the top. That is the U.S. imports of cotton, textiles, and apparel. U.S. is the largest market for global cotton, textiles, and apparel. Accounts for about 35% of global production. China accounts for about 22% of U.S. imports. Anything that potentially raises the price of textile imports in the U.S. has an outsized impact on global cotton consumption. U.S. balance sheet, mainly our only change this month is reducing our export forecast. We lowered it 100,000 bales, and that results in an equal increase in ending stocks, and those would be the largest ending stocks since 2008, except for the COVID year, 2019. So take out COVID, these would be the largest stocks since 2008. Sugar balance sheet, back year changes, just a small update. So basically, the main changes on the back here are that we got a data update on the re-export program. Higher estimate for sugar use for the re-export program, and that goes right into domestic deliveries, leaving ending stocks virtually unchanged. On the current crop year, the out year, some relatively large changes, especially when it comes to imports. But first, in terms of production, we reduced our cane production forecast 41,000 tons. That's just based on processor reporting, where they're indicating lower sugarcane yields. And then in terms of the import forecast, a big increase this month in high tier imports. 88,000 of that increase in the 181 here, 88,000 of that is raw sugar that recently came in. I mean, that, as you know, we count raw sugar as it enters. Also strong recent shipments of refined sugar. Strong refined pace is also part of that forecast, but it's worth noting that we have relatively high stocks of refined sugar right now, so future pace of refined imports are expected to slow. No change to our Mexico sugar supply and demand balance sheet this month. All right, let's move into meat and livestock. Beef production this month raised a bit, but there's actually a little bit more there than the small change implies. Essentially, we have higher weights and larger cow slaughter that is mostly offsetting or more than offsetting lower steer and heifer slaughter. So some offsets going on there that are worth noting that add up to a relatively small change overall in U.S. beef production this month. Pork production, incorporating, of course, the hogs and pigs report, that's dominating the change we made this month. Smaller pig crop in 2024 and flat to lower farrowings going forward. Expected to tighten up the pork supply going forward. Broiler production increased this month. Good returns on the broiler side, and we expect increases in production, especially the second half of the year. Turkey production down. That's just reflecting the latest hatchery data. In terms of prices, pretty strong increase in steer price this month, up $6 per hundredweight. We've seen very strong prices in March, and when we're seeing robust demand that we expect to continue, especially as we get into this kind of seasonal demand strength with the grilling season, et cetera. So that's supporting that steer price forecast. Hogs, on the other hand, hog prices we adjusted lower, and that is in part reflecting weaker exports, especially for the remainder of the year. Broilers, price strength there as well, especially some price strength in in breast meat and strong demand for broiler meat, consistent with high blood prices as well. Turkeys also raised our price forecast this month. Kind of unusually, I mean, that's been depressed for some time, but we've seen some recent strength in turkey prices. However, relatively light sales volume, so hard to know at this point exactly how robust that price strength will turn out to be. Okay, so meat trade, in terms of exports, reductions across the board in terms of our meat export outlook. Beef exports down 135 million pounds. That is largely driven by reduced exports to China due to tariff and non-tariff barriers. As you know, there's been a lapse in plant registrations for export to China, so that's holding back some of that export potential as well. Pork exports also down this month, lower exports to China, and increased competition to other markets, especially increased competition from Brazil and the EU. Broiler export forecast reduced this month too. A couple things there. U.S. price is pretty strong, so this forecast was reduced based on price competition, especially from Brazil. And turkey forecast lower based on lower production. Beef imports reduced this month to 15 million pounds. Couple things there. That's partially a result of tariffs, import tariffs of 10%, but also keeping in mind that higher cow slaughter in the U.S. Likely to increase availability of processing grade beef. Wrapping things up here with dairy, milk production up this month. That reflects essentially a increase in cow numbers based on revision by NAS recently. So that's largely a data-driven change this month. Also, some increase in milk per cow as well, but it's mainly a cow inventory change this month. In terms of trade, fat basis imports down this month. That is in part reflecting a tariff on butter coming in from the EU. Skim solids basis dairy trade exports down this month, 3 billion pounds. That's mainly whey and non-fat dry. And recognizing here too that China is a big market for whey. and they have retaliatory tariffs on. And with lower exports of skim solids, domestic use increases, as you can see there by the same amount. Prices, dairy prices adjusted lower this month across the board, consistent with higher production. Also perhaps on the non-fat dry and dry whey, lower exports also increasing US supplies. So higher production. Keeping in mind that though that these are price decreases from historically high prices, historically high product prices. So still relatively favorable overall. With the lower product prices, class prices are reduced as well. All milk price falls 50 cents per hundredweight this month to $21.10 per hundredweight. That would be down $1.51 year over year. And that's all I have for a quick overview of the WASDE. So thank you all for attending, and for those of you online, thank you as well. We will be back in May with our first new crop year rollout, and I hope to see you then.